Hi, and welcome to this beginner-friendly video. And this is an exercise in painting a variegated wash. So a regular wash, just with more colors than just one. And I'm using 3 colors in my wash here. And I'm starting out with a Prussian Blue on the top. Then I'm going in with some with a mix of Quinaqrodone Rose and New Gamboge, and then finally just New Gamboge. So it's a nice sunrise color, I think. Of course, you can totally experiment with this and get different results, but I like the transition from the dark blue to the light yellow. It's not a super experimental combination, I know, but it's good for beginners to actually try to mimic some of the colors that are in a photo of a sunrise, because then you have some kind of reference and you don't have to think too much of the color. You just have to worry about the technique. So here I'm just mixing up some colors. And the Prussian Blue is not actually mixed up, it's just, I just put some of it in the well here to have something to go on. And I can easily put water in it and make it nice and flowy. Now I just brushed my paper and just going in with a nice big brush here, putting down clean water. And you can see I taped the paper down. I'm just going in, sweeping strokes from left to right and right to left, and just wetting the top of the paper here. And now I'm just going in and putting down some nice blue here. And you can see how the blue actually are starting to flow down the page, and I like that. It gives a bit more natural look in our wash. But you can totally lay down the paper flat and it'll stop moving right away. Unless, of course, you have more water in one place than other. Then it'll go where the water is. You can see I'm just constantly working my edge here. I don't want my edge to be dry. If it dries, you get some really annoying lines, and you don't want that. So keep working on your edges so they are nice and wet. And I'm just going in with a little bit of Quinaqrodone Rose here just to give it some color. With a variegated wash and washes in general, you really have to be careful about the amount of water. If you have too much water in some place, it'll make blooms, and that's just extremely annoying. So you have to make sure that there's no puddles of water anywhere. Just this nice even layer of water, and then you can, as long as it's wet, you can go in and add more color and just move it around a little. Don't mix it too much on the paper. I'm just going in with some quick strokes here to spread it around. Just adding a little bit of yellow in the sky here. And I know this is not a part of the regular wash. If you just made a variegated wash, you wouldn't do this. You would stop yourself. And sometimes I can have a little hard time stopping myself. But that's because I wanted to make some clouds. So I'm just taking some tissue here and dabbing away some of the wet color. I'm sorry that it's just out of the frame here. Guess that happens when you move it around like I do. I'm just dabbing away and try to make sure that you are using different angles on the paper and not just doing blobs. I'm also trying to get the clouds on the top of the page a little bigger. Here I'm just adding a little bit of the mix of color to add some shadows underneath the clouds. Just going in with a damp brush to soften those edges, so we don't have a too hard lined shadow, because that would look a little weird. But I do like that it's the same colors as the sunrise that's reflected in the sky and in the clouds up in the blue sky. I'm just removing the water and paint that's on my tape here, and I taped it down to make sure it didn't buckle, because I knew I had to use a lot of water with my wash. And it's good if you have puddles, it'll there's a chance it'll make blooms, so and we don't want that, as I said before. So keep it fairly clean and you'll be safe. And I'm just removing a little more. It looked a little weird, so I'm just trying to look like clouds again. Fluffy clouds. Dabbing away here. And I want some of the clouds to go out of the frame, so we are just looking at a cutout and not just some clouds that's placed. Yeah, just adding a little more shadow to my clouds. A little more here. You just figure out when you think enough is enough, but I think we are about there now. Now we can let it dry and come back to it in a few minutes. Okay, now it's dried, and we can go in and make a second layer. And I have to apologize for this part of the movie, and I'm so sorry. For some reason it's a bit out of focus, and I hate that. But we just have to live with it. If it's too annoying, just go ahead and skip this part. In the end it'll be in focus again, but for this part it is unfortunately out of focus, and I'm sorry about that. I tried to fix it a little. Now that it's dry, I want to create my foreground, and I want it to be a tree standing on a hill with in silhouette. So just a nice, I'm just doing a nice ground here in a neutral tint mixed with the blue color, the Prussian blue that we used before. So it has a tone of the blue sky, which makes it super cohesive and beautiful. And then I'm trying to get some of these areas to be pretty light, so there's actually some of the background that shines through. And I know that's not entirely silhouette-ish, I know that should be just black, but I do like that it's not entirely black, but more dark, and still reflecting some of the beautiful light that's in the sky. And I'm just adding spots of darker color, so there's a nice variation in tone, and just dabbing in some color here and there, and trying to make it look interesting. If you just painted this like a shape in a neutral tint, this would be super boring, but look how I try to preserve some of the whites and just add in some shadows as well. That way you get a beautiful variation in the rocks. And now I'm just going in with another brush. Up till now we just used our huge 11 size brush, but now we're going in with the smaller brush. And just doing some details here, some grasses, and I'm actually just pulling out some of the color that's already in the rocks, and just doing some small grasses here. And do this with a light touch and don't overdo it. We do want our tree to be in focus. I just wanted to drag out some of the color before it dried out. Up here it already dried, so we are going in. I'm just trying to figure out where I'm going to put my tree trunk here. You can see this does take a little gut, because there's a beautiful sky. We don't want to ruin it, but we still want our tree to somehow emerge. So try to take a deep breath. Try to imagine how your tree is approximately going to look. You can also, of course, have a reference of a tree, and then you just try to lightly paint in the tree trunk here. And now I'm just doing some very loose lines here to try to figure out where my branches are gonna go. I do want this to be a very organic looking tree. I don't want any leaves or anything. This is more like a winter scene. Also for beginners, it's great to have these no leaf trees, because it's just easier to see the beautiful construction, and it's so graphic. So highly recommend that. And you can see I'm just using the tip of my brush here, and just trying to let the brush do the work actually, and I'm just holding it and letting it do its thing. I just try to my how I want my composition, because I do want some trees in a tree branch in the clouds up in the blue as well. So it is going to be pretty tall, which means that the tree trunk is large, fat in the bottom, and just trying to get it looking more realistic. Just adding some more branches. I want some of them to overlap. In reality, they actually overlap. It's just in paintings they sometimes don't. Yeah, I'm being a little too loose. Try to keep working with the tip of your brush, and also add a little branch here and there on the ground. It's like when you're in the woods, there's never just one tree standing there. There's always smaller ones surrounding it. So I'm doing that here and there. Just a little more grasses here to get some nice vegetation going. Even though it's a winter scene, there can totally be grasses, of course. They might be withered though, so this is not a green grass thing we have going. It's more like all those withered sticks and grasses that are looking super beautiful, but not very green. Here I'm just going in with the rose and new Gamboge mix to give it a little bit of the color from the sky. It's not going to be a lot, but it is going to look like a little bit of a reflection of the sky in the landscape here, which is going to give it a more cohesive feel. Look how beautiful the clouds and the blue it turned out. That's so beautiful. And how the variegated wash really just blends into each other. You have to work fast with paper like this, or technique like this, to make sure that it's not drying for you. And it will probably take a couple of times, because it's actually a little hard, especially if you are a complete beginner. Also, it's a good idea to have paper that can take a lot of water. I'm using 300 grams paper here, and it's 100% cotton, which also helps me keep it wet a little longer. Of course, you can do variegated washes with another type of paper, but you have to be really, really careful with the water, and try it a couple of times to see how it works for you. I'm just adding more as well. Just adding smaller one. You can see it's almost just flicks with my hands when I'm doing these. Just the tip of your brush. And I know this can seem a little daunting if you're a beginner, and that is totally fine. You should just try it, and if you're not up for the whole project, just try the wash, and then next time do the clouds maybe, and next time the silhouette. That's totally up to you. Now we can let it dry and hopefully come back to a more focused ending. There you go. Now we have a focus again. Now we can remove our masking tape here. And this is not in any way a professional masking tape. This is just something I had laying around from some craft project, but it does the job. Just make sure that you are removing it carefully, of course, but also very close to the paper like this. So no dragging around too much. Look at that nice crisp edge. So besides from holding it down to make sure it didn't buckle on the paper, it also looks really cool. If you don't have masking tape and a paper like this a block like this to tape it down to, you can use the back side of your block. You know, the paper. My goodness, that's what the problem about being Danish and not English. You know, the thing that has the paper in it. Well, you can use that if you have it, or you can just let your paper lay down and flat without attaching it to anything, and then just spray some water on the back side of your paper, and it'll be nice and flat and wet for longer. So that's an advantage too. Here I'm just going in with a very, very small block brush to add a few more details in a bit darker tone, so they'll stand out more than the ones we did before. They had dried a lot lighter than I wanted them. So when I get these, I can layer some darker ones on top and get a little more perspective in my painting. And here on the right, I'm gonna do some grasses that are a bit bigger, just to kind of make the proportions of this composition a little better. Otherwise the tree would kind of tip the composition a little. So I'm just doing some wild grasses, not flowers here in the winter, but wild grasses, just to give some interest to some texture and composition. And you can just go for a walk alongside some road if you are in need of inspiration for grasses. There's so many. Well, at least here there's so many. So there's plenty of inspiration out there, and you can of course just Google grasses if you are not, if you don't want to go out, or if you maybe live in the city. People do that. Of course, I have lived in cities for many years, so no, not many grasses there. I think I'm about done now. I hope you'll give it a try and upload it on Instagram and share it with everybody else. Thank you for watching.